Stoicism, my friends, is not some archaic relic of the past. It's a set of principles, a way of thinking, a philosophy of life that is as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. It's a philosophy for living in a world that is often chaotic and unpredictable, for facing the inevitable slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. The Stoics, you see, were deeply concerned with living a good life, a virtuous life, a life of meaning and purpose. Stoicism gives us a framework for navigating the complexities of life, for making sense of the world around us, and for finding peace and contentment within. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control, to accept what we cannot, and to live in accordance with nature. Amor fati, love of fate. This is a core principle of Stoicism, this idea that you should not merely accept what happens to you, but embrace it, love it. Now, this might sound strange, even impossible, especially when faced with tragedy or hardship. But consider this: fighting against the inevitable, railing against the universe, it only amplifies your suffering. It's like struggling against a riptide. You exhaust yourself and you get nowhere. But if you accept the reality of the situation, you can start to navigate it, to find a way through it. Amor fati is not about passive resignation, but about active acceptance. It's about recognizing that even in the midst of hardship, we can find meaning and purpose. The Stoics were adamant about this. Focus on what you can control. Your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, these are within your sphere of influence. The world outside, the external circumstances, the opinions of others, the fickle hand of fate, these are not yours to command. Trying to control what you cannot is a recipe for frustration and anxiety. It's like trying to herd cats. You're never going to succeed, and you're just going to end up stressed out. But when you focus on what you can control, you gain a sense of agency, of empowerment. You become the master of your own inner world, regardless of the storms raging outside. Memento mori, remember death. It sounds morbid, I know, but the Stoics saw this as a powerful tool for living a better life. Reflecting on our mortality helps us to prioritize, to focus on what truly matters. It reminds us that our time is precious, that each day is a gift. When we remember that we are mortal, we are less likely to waste our time on trivial matters, on petty squabbles, on chasing fleeting pleasures. Memento mori is not about dwelling on death, but about appreciating life, about living each day to the fullest, about making the most of the time we have. The Stoics divided things into three categories: good, bad, and indifferent. Good, things like virtue, wisdom, justice. Bad, things like vice, ignorance, injustice. And the indifferent? Well, that's everything else. Health, wealth, reputation, even our own lives. These are all ultimately indifferent in the grand scheme of things. Now, this doesn't mean we shouldn't care about these things. It means we shouldn't place our happiness, our sense of self-worth, on things that are ultimately outside of our control. Our happiness, the Stoics argued, should come from within, from living a virtuous life, from aligning ourselves with nature. This might sound counterintuitive, but the Stoics advocated for visualizing the worst-case scenarios. Why? Because doing so can actually reduce anxiety. When we imagine the worst that can happen, we often realize that it's not as bad as we feared, that we can handle it. This exercise also helps us to appreciate what we have, to be grateful for the good things in our lives. It's like taking out an insurance policy against fear. By facing our fears head-on, we disarm them. Self-discipline and perseverance were paramount virtues for the Stoics. They believed that we should train ourselves to endure hardship, to push through challenges, to never give up in the face of adversity. This is not about being harsh or punishing ourselves. It's about cultivating a strength of character, an inner resilience that allows us to face whatever life throws our way. Think of it like building a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. The Stoics believed that we should strive to act with virtue in every situation, not because it will bring us rewards or recognition, but because it is the right thing to do. Virtue for the Stoics was about living in accordance with reason, with nature, with the divine spark within us. It's about being honest, just, courageous, temperate, wise. It's about living a life of integrity, a life that we can be proud of. Eudaimonia. This is often translated as happiness, but it's a deeper, more profound concept. It's about living in agreement with nature, about fulfilling our potential as human beings. For the Stoics, eudaimonia was not about fleeting pleasures or external achievements. It was about living a virtuous life, a life of purpose and meaning. It was about cultivating inner peace and contentment, regardless of external circumstances. The Stoics recognized the importance of community, of our interconnectedness as human beings. We are social creatures, they argued, and we thrive in relationships with others. We have a duty to our fellow human beings to contribute to the common good. This doesn't mean we have to be friends with everyone or agree with everyone, but it does mean that we should treat others with respect, with kindness, with a sense of shared humanity. The Stoics practiced daily reflection, taking time each day to examine their thoughts, their actions, their progress on the path of virtue. This is about taking stock of our lives, about identifying areas where we can improve, where we can align ourselves more closely with our values. It's about holding ourselves accountable, about striving to become better human beings. The Stoics understood that change is inevitable, that everything is in a constant state of flux. The seasons change, people change, circumstances change. Resisting change, clinging to the past, only leads to suffering. The key, the Stoics argued, is to accept change, to adapt to new circumstances, to go with the flow of life. This doesn't mean we should be passive or complacent. It means that we should be flexible, resilient, adaptable. The Stoics practiced objective judgment, a technique for avoiding emotional overreactions. When something happens, before you react, take a step back. Observe the situation objectively without judgment. Ask yourself, is this truly a catastrophe or is it just an inconvenience? By separating our emotions from the situation, we can respond more rationally, more calmly, more effectively. The Stoics had a particular attitude towards wealth and material possessions. They weren't against wealth, but they cautioned against becoming attached to it. Wealth, they argued, is a tool, a means to an end, not an end in itself. It can be used for good or for ill. It can be a source of freedom or a source of anxiety. The key, the Stoics believed, is to use wealth wisely, to not let it control us, to not define our worth by our possessions. So, my friends, these are the 13 Stoic secrets, the keys to a more peaceful life. Remember, embrace your fate, focus on what you can control, and live in accordance with virtue. Reflect on your mortality, visualize the worst, and cultivate self-discipline and perseverance. Find joy in community, practice daily reflection, and accept the inevitability of change. Judge objectively, use wealth wisely, and always strive for eudaimonia, for a life of meaning and purpose. These are not easy teachings, but they are profound teachings.